The 𝗕𝗲𝘀 High Command convened in the war room of their flagship, the air thick with the scent of triumph. Holoscreens displayed Earth's burning cities, human resistance crushed beneath the might of their war machines. Supreme Warlord 𝗕𝗲𝘀 leaned back, mandibles clicking in amusement. "Pathetic," he rasped. Their so-called nations shattered in days. They begged for mercy we did not grant. Admiral 𝗲𝗲, the youngest among them, hesitated. Our scouts reported anomalies. Their history suggests... Irrelevant, 𝗕𝗁𝘀 interrupted. History is written by the victors. And we have already won. The others laughed, a chorus of chittering arrogance. Only 𝗲𝗲's gaze lingered on the data: human wars, rebellions, an entire species forged in conflict. A warning unheeded. The invasion had been swift. Orbital strikes crippled human defenses. Ground forces marched through streets lined with rubble, their plasmacasters cutting down any who resisted. The humans, divided and leaderless, fell into disarray. The 𝗕𝗲𝘀 reveled in their dominance, broadcasting their victory across the stars. But in the ruins, shadows moved. A 𝗕𝗲𝘀 patrol vanished near the ruins of old Chicago. No distress call. No bodies. Just a single graffitied message on the wreckage of their skimmer. You should have killed us all. 𝗕𝗲𝘀 dismissed it as desperation. Scavengers. Vermin clinging to life. Then the outposts began falling. Silent. Methodical. No grand battles, no heroic last stands, just slaughter. A supply depot erupted in flames, its guards found with their throats slit. A communications hub went dark, its last transmission a scream cut short. Then came the first warlord's death. Draxus the Blooded, conqueror of 6 systems, died in his command tent. No alarms. No struggle. Just a single bullet through his skull, the weapon left beside his corpse, a primitive human rifle. The message was clear. This was not war. This was hunting season. And humanity had just become the hunters. The 𝗕𝗲𝘀 expected submission. Instead, they found silence where human cities once stood, not the quiet of defeat, but the stillness of a predator coiled to strike. Their patrols ventured into the ruins and never returned. Their supply convoys vanished without trace. Their commanders slept behind fortified walls and woke to find their guards dead, their weapons missing, and their nightmares filled with whispers in the dark. At first, the High Command dismissed it as desperation. Then the broadcasts began. Human voices crackled across occupied channels, reciting names, 𝗕𝗲𝘀 names, troop deployments, even the private frequencies of their generals. Every transmission ended the same way. We remember. We are coming. The Dominion's response was fury. They bombed empty ruins, burned forests where no humans hid, executed prisoners who knew nothing. Their frustration grew with each passing cycle. They were warriors bred for glorious battle, not this gnawing at their flanks, this invisible war fought in shadows and blood. Then came the ambush at Vega Outpost. A full battalion of 𝗕𝗲𝘀 shock troops, armed to the teeth and marching in perfect formation, walked into the kill zone. The first mine took out their lead column. The second disabled their comms. By the time the snipers opened fire, it was already over. The humans didn't charge. They didn't gloat. They simply picked the aliens apart, one shot at a time, until the sands ran black with 𝗕𝗲𝘀 blood. The lone survivor, a young warrior missing 3 limbs, was left alive just long enough to deliver a message. His superiors found him crawling through the wastes, clutching a data chip in his remaining hand. The footage showed humans, not the cowed, broken creatures the Dominion expected, but grim-faced soldiers moving like ghosts through the night. They spoke in calm, measured tones as they rigged explosives, sabotaged ships, and slit the throats of sleeping 𝗕𝗲𝘀. The final image was a human holding up a severed Dominion banner, its sigil drenched in alien blood. "You thought this was a conquest," a voice said. It's an extermination. The chip self-destructed seconds later. Across occupied space, 𝗕𝗲𝘀 morale began to crack. For the first time in their empire's history, they wondered if they had made a mistake. But it was already too late to ask for mercy. The humans weren't listening. The 𝗕𝗲𝘀 Dominion had waged war across 100 star systems, crushing civilizations beneath their armored treads. They knew how enemies behaved, how they broke, how they begged, how they died. But this was something else. Humanity didn't fight for territory, didn't demand surrender, didn't even speak, save for those chilling, clipped transmissions that slithered through secure channels like a knife between ribs. Asterisk, run. Asterisk, asterisk, we see you. Asterisk, asterisk, your bloodline ends tonight. Asterisk. High Command reeled. Entire garrisons went dark without warning. Supply depots exploded in synchronized detonations that left no trace of human involvement. Officers began dying in their sleep, their throats slit by blades that left behind no fingerprints, just smears of ink-black human blood, a taunt written in biology. Then the broadcasts escalated. Every 𝗕𝗲𝘀 screen, every comm frequency, every holographic display in occupied space flickered to life with the same grainy footage. A human, clad in scavenged Dominion armor, standing over the corpse of a high warlord. The figure didn't speak, didn't gloat, just reached down, wrenched the warlord's ceremonial glaive from his dead grip, and drove it through the Dominion banner on the wall behind him. The message was undeniable. This wasn't insurgency. This was inheritance. Panic set in. 𝗕𝗲𝘀 soldiers, bred for conquest, found themselves jumping at shadows. They opened fire on rustling debris, incinerated empty buildings in hysterical barrages, turned their weapons on each other in the fog of paranoia. The mightiest army in the galaxy was unraveling, not from defeat, but from the slow, surgical dismantling of their certainty. Then came 𝗕𝗏𝗍, a full legion, 5,000 strong, fortified in an impregnable mountain citadel. They lasted 6 hours. The humans didn't siege, didn't bombard. They simply appeared. Inside the walls, beneath the floors, between the patrol routes. Security feeds showed Dominion soldiers dying mid-sentence, their bodies jerking as invisible rounds punched through their skulls from impossible angles. The Citadel's commander barricaded himself in the central vault, only to find a human already waiting inside, lounging in his command throne. The last transmission from 𝗕𝗏𝗍 was the sound of the commander screaming. Not in pain, in realization. By the time reinforcements arrived, the Citadel stood empty. Not a single human corpse. Just 5,000 𝗕𝗲𝘀 dead, arranged in a perfect spiral from the vault outward, each body missing its right hand. On the Citadel's outer walls, written in ash and alien blood, a single phrase. Asterisk, we are the reckoning. Asterisk. The Dominion finally understood. They weren't being fought. They were being erased. The 𝗕𝗲𝘀 had no word for what they became. Not warriors. Not victims. Prey. Their fleets scattered, abandoning conquest to flee the growing darkness at their backs. Commanders who once boasted of genocide now whispered in bunkers, their voices hollow as they reviewed casualty reports that made no tactical sense. Entire divisions gone without a single shot fired in return. Outposts reduced to charnel houses, the dead arranged in patterns that seared themselves into the minds of those who found them. Then the coordinates began appearing. At first, they seemed random, scrawled on the walls of derelict ships, carved into the flesh of the few survivors left breathing, broadcast on encrypted Dominion channels in voices that shouldn't have known the codes. Numbers. Vectors. Star charts. It took the High Command 3 cycles to realize what they were looking at. A map. Leading home. Panic turned to frenzy. The ruling caste barricaded themselves behind planetary shields, surrounded by the last loyal legions. They told themselves it was a tactical withdrawal. A regrouping. Not the frantic retreat of an empire that had finally met something older and hungrier than itself. They were still lying to each other when the sky burned. No grand armada descended upon the 𝗕𝗲𝘀 homeworld. No thunderous declaration of war. Just silence, then the orbital defenses failing one by one, like lights winking out. The shields held for exactly 17 minutes before the humans bypassed them using stolen Dominion codes. The first warheads fell on the capital. Not kinetic. Not plasma. Chemical. Biological. Human. Designed not to simply kill, but to remember. To twist and burn and replicate the agony of every city they'd razed, every child they'd slaughtered, every atrocity they'd called victory. The screams of the dying carried farther than the explosions. High Command's final transmission wasn't a plea, wasn't a curse. It was a question. What are you? The reply came not from any calm channel, but from 1,000 human mouths whispering across 1,000 battlefields, in 1,000 ruined cities, in the marrow-deep certainty that now lived where 𝗕𝗲𝘀𝘁 had been. The answer to the question you shouldn't have asked. When the last fires burned out, there were no statues toppled, no monuments defaced, just silence where an empire had been. And somewhere in the dark between stars, the humans finally lowered their weapons. Not because they'd run out of targets, because they'd run out of anger. The lesson would last longer than the Dominion ever had. The silence after extinction is different. Not peaceful, not victorious, just complete. The galactic datanets flickered with static where Dominion channels had once blared propaganda. Star systems they'd claimed now spun undisturbed, their occupation forces reduced to drifting wreckage and unanswered distress beacons. The few surviving 𝗕𝗲𝘀𝘁, stragglers, deserters, those who'd been light years away when the hammer fell, spoke in hushed tones of something they couldn't name. Not defeat. Annihilation. Human ships didn't patrol the dead empire's borders, didn't plant flags on conquered worlds. They simply vanished back into the void from which they'd come, leaving only ghosts and unanswered questions. The other stellar powers sent probes, scouts, diplomats, all returned with the same report. Nothing. No demands. No manifestos. No triumphant broadcasts. Just empty space where a civilization had been erased with surgical precision. Then the first memorials appeared. Not built by human hands. Not marked with human words. But in 100 languages, on 1,000 worlds, the same image emerged, a single blackened 𝗕𝗲𝘀𝘁 war banner, its edges still smoldering, planted upright in barren soil. No explanations. No threats. Just a warning carved in stone beside each one. We remember. The message wasn't for the dead. It was for the living. Merchant vessels began avoiding former Dominion space altogether. Militaries quietly scrubbed preemptive strike doctrines from their tactical manuals. Children on 12 worlds were taught new nursery rhymes about the price of arrogance. And in the quiet dark between stars, humanity watched. Not with malice. Not with pride. Just the calm certainty of a predator that had reminded the galaxy why it sat atop the food chain. The lesson would hold. Until the next fools came calling. The galaxy held its breath. 4 cycles, no one dared speak of what had happened. The void where the Dominion once ruled remained untouched, its dead worlds orbiting like gravestones in the dark. Other empires recalibrated their ambitions overnight. Conquest fleets were quietly recalled, border disputes settled with uncharacteristic haste, xenobiology departments across known space suddenly received massive funding increases. Then the first scout ship crossed the old quarantine line. Its crew expected radiation scars, wreckage fields, perhaps some lingering bioweapon haze. They found none of these. Just cleanliness. Cities stood intact but empty, their streets swept clean of debris. Spaceports waited with landing lights still active, their fuel reserves untouched. Dominion data cores hummed quietly in abandoned command centers, their encryption stripped away, every war crime, every atrocity, every arrogant proclamation now laid bare for the galaxy to see. And in the heart of each dead world's capital, one final message pulsed on every screen. Judge them. The implications spread faster than light. This wasn't just vengeance. This was accountability on a cosmic scale. Humanity hadn't simply destroyed their enemies, they'd preserved the evidence, then stepped aside to let history do the execution. The first historians who dared examine the archives emerged shaking. The second wave brought lawyers. By the third cycle, half the galaxy's governments had collapsed under the weight of their own complicity. Treaties with the Dominion, weapon sales, turned backs on genocides. And through it all, not a single human appeared. No demands for reparations. No righteous occupation. Just that endless, echoing silence and the terrible gift of truth. Slowly, painfully, the galaxy began to change. Trade agreements were rewritten with atrocity clauses. Planetary defense budgets shifted to humanitarian aid. The words, "never again," appeared in 1,000 languages across memorials that hadn't existed before. On the 1-year anniversary of the silence, as it came to be called, every 𝗕𝗲𝘀 array in known space crackled to life simultaneously. No images. No speeches. Just 3 minutes of static, the exact duration of Earth's final distress call before the Dominion bombardment began. When it ended, new protocols appeared in every major database. First contact guidelines, rules of engagement, definitions of crimes against civilizations, and at the bottom of each document, in small but indelible type, *, approved by unanimous consent of surviving humanity. *, the galaxy understood at last. This wasn't a warning. It was a legacy, and it would endure long after the last human had vanished back into the dark. The silence became a religion. Across 100 worlds, cults arose worshipping the absence. They built no temples, carved no idols, just empty spaces where followers would sit motionless for hours, straining to hear echoes of what had passed. The devout claimed they could still feel it, that terrible, perfect certainty that had swept through the stars like a solar wind, scouring away an empire down to its foundations. Scholars called it post-traumatic galactic recalibration. Survivors called it justice. The 𝗕𝗲𝘀 client species emerged from bondage blinking like cave dwellers dragged into sunlight. At first they waited for new masters to come, then slowly realized none were coming. The chains remained broken. The whip hands had been severed at the wrist. One by one, they began whispering the same heresy. *We're free. Not through rebellion. Not through treaty. Through example. The Androthi, once the Dominion's favored slave soldiers, melted their shock collars down into farming tools. The Veil, whose homeworld had been strip-mined to fuel conquest, found their orbital rings still intact, purged of 𝗕𝗲𝘀 codes, waiting patiently for new owners. No human ships came to check on them. No human voices offered guidance. Just the unshakable knowledge that somewhere in the dark, something was still watching. The galaxy's remaining powers convened an emergency conclave. Armadas stood down. War plans were incinerated. For the first time in recorded history, the great empires voted unanimously to do nothing. No memorials were erected for the Dominion. No histories recorded their triumphs. Their very name became a curse, then a cautionary tale, then finally just a blank space in the archives where a civilization used to be. On the 5th anniversary of the silence, a child on 𝗕𝗲𝘀 asked her teacher what happened to the humans. The old scholar paused a long moment before answering. They went home. But where's home? The child pressed. The teacher looked up at the stars, then back at the empty space on the classroom wall where a Dominion flag had once hung. Wherever the next monsters are foolish enough to wake them. And in the quiet that followed, the lesson settled deeper than any law or treaty ever could. The peace held. Not out of wisdom, out of fear. And in that fear, finally, something like hope. The first alien to see a human in 23 cycles died of shock before he could scream. His last transmission showed only a figure in scavenged armor standing at the edge of a dead Dominion outpost, head tilted as if listening to something in the solar winds. When the rescue team arrived, they found his body carefully arranged in the docking bay, eyes closed, hands folded, a single earth oak sapling planted where his heart had been. The galaxy held its breath again. But no fleets came. No worlds burned. Just that same terrible silence stretching thinner with each passing moment, until even the bravest started jumping at shadows. Then the patterns emerged. Abandoned human colony worlds, ones the Dominion had missed in their purges, began flickering back to life. Not with cities or industry, but with gardens. Vast, sprawling ecosystems where radioactive deserts had been, each centered around a single polished stone marker bearing the same inscription in 1,000 languages. We were here. Xenobiologists who tested the soil found it clean of toxins. Archaeologists discovered carefully preserved data caches, not military secrets, but art, music, literature, the complete cultural output of a species that had refused to die quietly. The first historians to piece together the full story wept. This wasn't reconstruction. It was resurrection. Slowly, carefully, other species began adding their own contributions. A Veil symphony etched onto diamond and left beside a human sonnet. An Androthi war mural painted across the hull of a derelict Dominion dreadnought. The galaxy's grief and guilt and dawning hope given form, left like offerings at a shrine no one dared name. On the centennial of the silence, the memorials changed again. New words appeared beneath the originals. Asterisk, we are still here. Asterisk, no one saw them being carved. No human ships appeared on scanners. But that night, every FTL receiver in civilized space picked up the same transmission, just 3 seconds of a sound no living being recognized until the linguists deciphered it. Laughter. Soft. Warm. Alive. The next morning, the first shoots of Earth wheat were found growing in the shadow of the Galactic Council's headquarters. No one touched them. No one needed to. The message was clear enough. Watch. Remember. Grow.